I've always been fascinated by superheroes and villains ever since I was a kid, and I still am today. They represent the best and worst parts of who we are deep down, who we can strive to be, and what we might become if we fail to follow our own hearts. The first memory of a superhero I can recall is of Batman. I used to watch the TV show on Cartoon Network as a kid in the 90s. I always loved his white eyes and how they would change depending on his mood. And his costume, it was beautiful. His dark persona and his personality, it was all so intriguing to me. Now at the same time, I also remember the Joker. Clowns were always kind of frightening to me, and I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe it's the makeup, maybe the shoes, or the designs of their costumes, but I was always unsettled by them. The Joker was always like the yin to Batman's yang, or vice versa. I only ever knew them in the cartoon, as I never read comics, and I never even knew what comics were, and still to this day, I have never seen or read an actual comic book. Sad to say, I know. So all of my experience with superheroes has been through movies, TV shows, or video games. I believe Spider-Man was the only real superhero game I ever played. It started out back on the PlayStation, I believe. It was the game where your webs would attach to the sky as you would swing through the city, if any of you remember that. And then eventually I got my own PlayStation 4 a couple years ago, and I played Spider-Man on it. It was an incredible game, amazing. I'm actually waiting for the Batman games to get remastered into 4K and 60 frames before I play them, because I've heard they are also very good games. So, being a kid, all I knew of Batman and Joker was on a TV show. I never saw a live-action film or anything like that. Fast forward to what I believe was around 2005, and I heard that they were going to be making a Batman live-action movie. I was so excited because I love Batman. But deep in my heart, I was even more excited to see the Joker for some reason. I wanted to see him on screen. Well, as we all know, with Batman Begins, the Joker was not in the movie. I waited the entire movie to see the Joker, but he never came. He never showed up. I did love Scarecrow, however. He was fantastic, and I still love his performance to this day. But then, at the very end of the movie, Batman is on a roof with Officer Gordon, and he talks about a new criminal in Gotham who leaves a calling card. He then pulls out a Joker playing card. I was elated. I knew all at once that there was going to be another Batman movie, and it would be starring Joker as the main antagonist. My hype was at ultimate levels. Months later, I remember talking to one of my friends in school, who told me that the first image of the Joker had been released to build excitement for the movie. He told me that the image was terrifying. Well, of course, I rushed home to search it up on the internet, and I was drawn in instantly. The image was just a close-up shot of Heath Ledger's face covered in Joker paint. I had never seen anything like it in my life. Then, after a few more months or years, The Dark Knight came out in 2008, I believe. I saw it with my girlfriend at the time, and I remember the opening shot when they showed a man standing on the street corner with a mask in his hand and a bag over his shoulder. She leans over to me and she whispers, "That's Heath Ledger, that's the Joker." I whispered back, "How can you tell?" She said, "Because of the way he's standing, I can just tell that's him." Well, she was right. That was him. Little did I know I was about to witness the single greatest acting performance I would ever see in my entire life. And it still holds true today. Heath Ledger's Joker is still the best performance I've ever seen in a movie. The way he moved, the way he talked, his behaviors, his little facial expressions. It was all perfection. His presence, just terrifying. Never before had I seen a character come to life in such a way. It was mesmerizing, captivating, to say the least. As it turns out, I wasn't the only one who thought so. Sadly, Mr. Ledger died shortly after filming the movie and never got to witness the profound impact he had on media and movies as a whole. But his passing didn't stop him from winning an Oscar for Best Performance the following year. The entire world seemed to agree with my perception, which was very reassuring. I was developing my eye for art. Heath Ledger's Joker was the single greatest acting performance to ever grace the big screen. History had been written in stone, never to be undone. Fast forward many years later to about 2015, and a new Joker was cast, Jared Leto. The moment I saw him in the trailers for Suicide Squad, I was not too impressed. I never saw the movie due to poor reception and a lack of interest on my end. One day I'll see it, but just to really evaluate his performance. Now, based on the trailers, I was not very interested at all. And it still doesn't appeal to me now, in 2019. So to me, in my mind and my heart, the Joker was dead. The character was gone. There was no coming back after Heath's performance. It was a goal that no mere mortal could ever reach. The bar was simply set too high for anyone to even come close to it. I was content going my entire life into my grave and never seeing another live adaptation of the Joker ever again. Because to me, in my heart, any other Joker would just end up being a disappointment. Well, a few years later, around 2017, I heard rumblings about a standalone Joker movie that was in the works. And the moment I heard it, I shook my head and I said, no. This is a bad idea, I thought. What are they thinking? DC, what are you doing? You already screwed up big time with Suicide Squad's Joker. Now you're gonna give him a standalone origin movie? I was very sad and upset, to be honest with you. But it wasn't long after this that I heard it was going to be a new actor, not Leto. My interest was piqued a bit, but I still had almost zero hope for the movie, that it would be any good or that whoever they cast would even come close to Heath Ledger. Things were quiet for most of 2018. I didn't hear much. Then a leaked image of Joaquin Phoenix got released to the internet in his Joker outfit, and I thought it was pretty good. To me, it seemed like a decent middle ground between, the terrible Leto's portrayal and the masterpiece that was Heath Ledger. Then, once again, silence. I heard and saw nothing more of it, and frankly, I forgot it was even in production. Well, 2019 rolls around, and I am very excited for It Chapter 2. Little did I know there was another clown coming this Halloween that was going to change everything forever. I still remember the day, April 4th, 2019. The first Joker trailer was released. And what I saw astounded me. I was hooked. The darkness, the grittiness, the lack of special effects, the realism. It shook me to the core. Now keep in mind, this is amidst the 10-year-long escapade of Marvel movies leading up to Endgame, which came out in early 2019. I fell off Marvel movies entirely after Iron Man 3, and I never saw anything else except the first Avengers. The movies seemed to be getting cheesier and cheesier as time went on. Terrible CGI, overuse of special effects, cringy one-liners and quips. As I said, I haven't really seen 90% of the Marvel movies, but based on the trailers and people's reactions, it doesn't seem like it's for me at all. One day I do want to watch all of them in order, and I'm sure there is some value to be had there. and I do love Tony Stark. But for the most part, they hold very little interest or resonance in my heart. I know I'm in the minority for saying it, but DC has always been my cup of tea in comparison to Marvel. Marvel is just too light-hearted for the subject matter, too many jokes and a lack of tone or artistic expression in lieu of explosions and fight scenes. The entire universe was supposed to be at stake, yet all I felt was the characters were trying to constantly one-up each other with punchlines or a show of strength. But the Joker trailer? It was a different beast altogether. The music. My God, the music. The lighting, the directing, the characters, the atmosphere, everything. It seemed masterful. Not to mention Joaquin Phoenix. I was captivated. It drew me in such a way. I was and still am at a loss for words in regards to that first trailer. There was not a single explosion, CGI effect, cliche one-liner, or anything that we have come to expect from a superhero movie as of late. The Joker trailer burrowed its way into my heart and it never let go. I don't think it ever will. For the next 6 months, I watched it, psychologically analyzed it, absorbed it. I made a YouTube video a few days later after it came out, analyzing every single frame as I could not get it out of my head. It grabbed me and it never let me go. To me, based on the trailer alone, I believe that Joaquin would not only rival Heath's performance, but that he would receive an Oscar come 2020. Now, as of the writing of this video, it is still October 2019, and I stand by my original thoughts that I had back in April. A new Joker is in town, and I once again don't think there is anything that can top this. I didn't go see the movie opening weekend because I didn't want to be surrounded by all the people in the theater and to get a bad seat, you know what I mean? So I waited an extra week, and finally, last Friday, I saw it. And honestly, after walking out of the theater, I felt terrible. I was depressed and sad, and I felt so alone. More alone than I usually feel. Put simply, I felt awful. I knew it was a great movie, but I had just begun to feel its depth and the hold that it would take on me. Walking out, I told myself, yeah, it was great, probably a 9 out of 10, but I still prefer Heath's performance. Now that was last Friday. It has been about 1 week since that day, and for the life of me, I can't get this movie out of my head. My initial spoiler-free review was recorded as I left the theater, and I titled it A Slow Burn. And I love that that was my initial reaction. I just didn't realize how slow of a burn it was. Day after day, night after night, I find it seeping into my subconscious and overtaking my thoughts. Throughout the next week, I found myself randomly feeling horrible and almost breaking down into tears as moments of the movie replayed themselves over and over in my mind. It was so dark, so twisted, so screwed up, but so true. I am now at the point where in my heart, Joaquin has largely already caught up to Heath in regards to his performance, and he honestly rivals him frame by frame. These two Jokers are essentially on equal footing inside my heart, and I think that's saying something for Joaquin. Heath still wins out by a small margin. But over time, as I see the movie more and more, it's not unreasonable to believe that in the end, they will end up at a complete stalemate inside my heart and my mind. I wonder what that says about me as a person. That my two favorite acting performances of all time were both crazy villainous clowns who were beat down and utterly destroyed by their environment and the society that surrounded them. I guess my heart knows and feels the same way they do, in a sense. Society is an ugly place in today's day and age. People just don't care. And their costumes and their performances are almost like physical manifestations of the pain and hurt caused by this lack of empathy and love. Both of their backstories are tragic and heartbreaking, no matter which version you believe. Whether it was the Dark Knight's Joker's father who abused him, or the wife who left him, or the delusions and hallucinations experienced by Joaquin's Joker, and the society who beat him down into dust. No matter which way you slice it, these men were a sad, depressing product of their environment, and the result is nothing short of beautiful darkness. I never, ever write scripts for my videos. They are usually all off the cuff, improvised and free-flowing. But I just had too many thoughts for this video that I had to write them down. I had to get them on paper first. This is far and away the longest and most in-depth psychological analysis I have ever done. And I hope it speaks to you in some way. In case you haven't figured it out by now, there will be spoilers, okay? So if you haven't seen the movie, please stop watching this video right now and go see it. Please, I implore you. If you are a fan of art, you need to see it. There are very few movies that I would recommend with such passion and strength. To me, this is going to go down in history as one of the greatest movies ever made, along with The Dark Knight, The Revenant, Donnie Darko, the Matrix trilogy, the Back to the Future trilogy, Lord of the Rings series, and Harry Potter. These are the types of movies that I believe every single human on Earth needs to experience before they die. It does not matter if you hate superhero movies. If you love art, if you love passion and pure expression, you need to see this movie. Mainstream media is trying to destroy this movie by spreading their own political agenda to the world, and I can't sit idly by and allow that to happen. I won't. They portray the Joker as a purely evil psychopath who is out to get revenge on the entire world because, in their minds, the Joker believes he is entitled to be rich and famous. This false narrative that they are spinning could not be further from the truth. I am going to make the argument that the Joker is not evil at all. In fact, quite the opposite. And there are many scenes in this movie to support my claims. This movie, among many other things, is a character study of loneliness and isolation in modern-day society. The opening scene shows Arthur Fleck, the main character, putting on his clown makeup and forcing a smile across his face with his fingers. As he does so, you see a single tear stream down his cheek and the emptiness in his eyes. Within seconds, we start to understand this character. He sits alone, isolated from the other workers, and he seems lost in his own head. Shortly after, you see him street performing with a sign that says, "Everything must go." He's dancing, and he genuinely seems to be having a good time, trying to entertain the street folk as they are walking past, going about their daily lives. This Joker loves to dance. All of this is portrayed without words, without dialogue, just his movement and behavior. Pure acting. Then, a group of teenagers steals the sign and run away. He chases them through the streets, begging for someone to help stop them. But everyone completely ignores his cries for help. He runs into a back alley after them, only to get jumped and beat up. They destroy the sign by breaking it over his head. They rob him, beat him, and leave him broken and weeping on the ground. The imagery here is so profound and powerful that you can't help but feel sorry for this guy. He was just trying to entertain people, and look how the world repays him. Unfortunately, this is only the beginning of his heartache. He then gets scolded and almost fired by his boss for losing the sign. After trying to explain that he got jumped and the sign was stolen, the boss cuts him off and yells at him. One of his coworkers gives him a gun and says, "You need to protect yourself out there." Well, things at home aren't any better. His mother is sick and she can't work. He takes care of her 24/7. He does everything he can to make her happy, but it doesn't appear to do much in regards to her love. She seems more fixated on Thomas Wayne, the man she used to work for over 30 years ago. Always watching the TV, looking for him, and hoping that he will come to save the two of them. Later, there is a scene where Arthur is in the studio audience for his role model, Murray, and he screams, "I love you," during the show. Hearing this, Murray has him stand up and tell the audience about himself. Arthur explains that he lives with his mother, and she always told him that he had a purpose: to bring laughter and joy to the world. Murray is impressed by this, and he reciprocates Arthur's love and respect to him. It's a heartwarming scene. Later, on the train, Arthur tries to start making funny faces at a kid who begins to laugh at him. Once again, he seems genuinely happy and enjoying himself, bringing laughter and connection to another human. Only to be shut down by the child's mother. She scolds Arthur. He begins to laugh hysterically. As he's laughing, he hands her a card that explains his condition, which makes him laugh even though he feels sad and terrible inside. The visual behaviors he exhibits here are heart-wrenching, as you can see the pain inside him as he tries to make himself stop laughing, but he can't. It's painful to hear and even more excruciating to watch. Later, during another scene, he is at a children's hospital, dancing and singing for them. But during his act, the gun he was given falls onto the floor, and he screams as he scrambles to pick it up and tries to act like nothing happened. This is one of the only funny moments in the entire movie, just because of the way he reacted. But sadly, the humor is short-lived, as the very next scene shows him using a payphone while talking to his boss, who proceeds to fire him. His boss then adds insult to injury by saying one of his co-workers told him that Arthur tried to buy a gun off of him the week prior. And you can hear the sadness and betrayal in Arthur's voice as he says, "Randall told you that?" There are so many parallels between this movie and real life that it's not even funny. Have you ever known someone in your life whom you truly believe to be your friend, and then seemingly out of nowhere they betray you and stab you in the back? Yeah, I know I have. Pretty much every single person I've ever met. It's sad, but it's true. As I've grown up, I've lost literally every person whom I've ever cared about due to them lying to me or betraying me in some way. All I've ever tried to do is connect with others, bring love into their life. But so far, all I've gotten is betrayal. It breaks my heart to even think about this. It was heartbreaking to hear the sadness in his voice as he asked the boss that question, as if he is in disbelief. Like, there's no way. Randall's my friend. How could he do that to me? The truth was all too real. My heart is breaking as I'm writing this, because I can relate all too well to the tragic things that happened to Arthur in this movie. But something inside me is driving me to get these words down on paper to share with the world. I can only hope that they mean something to whoever is listening to this. The following scene is when things go from bad to worse. Arthur is defeated, fired from his job, sitting on a subway, dressed in his clown costume, all alone. There is a woman sitting across from him and a few seats down to the left. Then, 3 men in suits get on the train who are talking about Wayne Enterprises. They begin to harass the woman. Arthur notices this and he begins to laugh uncontrollably. Now, I believe that he felt uncomfortable with the men harassing the woman, and he wanted to help her, and he wanted to stop them, but he couldn't do anything about it, and his sad yet caring emotions were expressed through his mental disorder as laughter. The woman leaves the train cabin, and then the men proceed to come over to Arthur and beat the daylights out of him. They are hitting him so aggressively and with such force that me, sitting in the audience, I began to wonder when they would stop, and if they were actually going to kill him right then and there. Out of nowhere, you hear a gunshot, and one of the men falls back against the inside of the train with blood splattering on the wall. The camera cuts to Arthur on the ground, holding his gun, and he begins to shoot the other man, killing him instantly. And then he manages to wound the third with a gunshot to the leg, and he later hunts him down through the subway station, and he finishes him off with a few more rounds in the back as the man struggles to get away. Now, the media in this movie, just like the media in the real world, portrayed this as unnecessary and a needless act of violence. They paint the picture that the man dressed as a clown is a psycho killer who murdered 3 completely innocent men, which we all know is not true. I humbly ask you, the viewer of this video, what would you have done if you were in Arthur's shoes? Would you have just rolled over and let the 3 men beat you to death? Is that what you wanted Arthur to do? You wanted him to just lay back and take this abuse, allowing them to end his life through a physical beating in a 3 versus 1? 3 healthy, mentally stable people versus 1 obviously mentally ill and weak and frail man? You wanted to see him die right then and there? Not I. I understand what he did. Do I wish there was another way? Of course I do. I wish he could have been saved by a police officer or by other noble citizens. But sadly, there were none around at the time. Push came to shove, and Arthur did what any person or animal would do when backed into a corner with no way out. He defended himself. If you've ever been in a similar situation where you have no way out and fighting back is your only option, then you would completely understand this. And if you don't understand it, you've obviously never been in any real danger your entire life, and you are used to a life of safety and luxury. But that's not the real world. The real world is a scary, terrifying place, and in order to survive, you must fight. You must defend yourself or be swept away by the raging society that you live in. I do, however, wish that he hadn't fatally wounded the men. But it is never known whether he was trying to kill them or simply to get them to stop their abuse. Either way, the end result is the same. The 3 men died, and he escaped with his life. Barely. It is perfectly clear, up until that point, that he never had any intention whatsoever of using the gun or inflicting harm on anyone. In fact, the opposite is true. Up until that point, all he ever tried to do was spread happiness and joy to everyone he met. He tried to make people's lives better to the best of his ability. And all he got in return was hatred, rejection, and disdain. His valiant efforts were all fruitless, yielding no positive results. He was pushed into a corner with no way out and only had 2 choices: to die or to fight for his life. And he chose the latter. How can anyone be mad at him for that or not understand his perspective? This does not necessarily justify his further actions later in the movie, where he kills a few more people, but it is not hard to understand where he is coming from in that regard. Now, I firmly believe that there is always a way to solve problems without the use of violence in 99.9% of cases. But the fact that Arthur resorted to violence and killing just shows how desperate and distraught he was in his depressed mental state, that he felt like it was the only solution to his problems. It's heartbreaking to think about. If you are going into this film wanting a feel-good movie, then you are going to be sorely disappointed. This movie is the furthest thing from a feel-good film. Later in the movie, it is revealed to Arthur that Thomas Wayne is his father, and he goes to see him by sneaking into the bathroom during a play at a well-to-do theater house. When confronted with his father, he doesn't resort to violence or even think to do so. He just tries to talk to him. Of course, Thomas Wayne denies the claim that he is Arthur's father, and instead he insists that his mother was insane and that Arthur is adopted. He yells at Arthur and asks him if he came here for money. And Arthur rebuttals that he doesn't want money. He just wants a hug. He wants love. He starts yelling at Thomas, saying something along the lines of, "What is wrong with you people? Can't anyone act civil anymore?" You can literally see his heart breaking on the movie screen as he begins to laugh hysterically once again due to his condition. Now, Thomas doesn't really know about his condition, and he asks him if this is a joke, if this is a joke to him. And while he's laughing, Arthur shakes his head, signaling that he's trying to show Thomas it's not a funny situation, yet he can't control his laughter due to his mental condition. It's excruciating to watch. Well, then Thomas punches him right in the face. Now keep in mind, this is after he kills those 3 men on the train. He still is seeking love and acceptance. He still wants to feel a connection to someone, and he tries oh so desperately to do so. Things only go downhill from here. Arthur obtains medical records claiming his mother had adopted him, and that Thomas was telling the truth. Apparently, he was abused by his mother and her boyfriend as a child, and she was admitted to Arkham Asylum. With this revelation, he kills his own mother in a horrific scene. He also sees his idol on the television start to talk about him. He gets really excited for a moment, but then he realizes that Murray is actually just making fun of him. And his heart is once again shattered into many more pieces as he struggles to hold on. Throughout the movie, he had a relationship with a girl who lived down the hall, but even that proves to be nothing more than a hallucination as he enters her apartment one day and she is terrified to find him there. Any semblance of happiness or relationships are shattered as the movie continues. He has a wonderful moment with her in the elevator, and she pretends to shoot herself as a joke, and they both laugh. Not knowing how to connect, the only thing he can do is he yells at her from down the hall, and then he does the exact same thing to himself. Once again, this is one of the only moments of levity in the entire movie. It's so short-lived. Anything and everything he ever believed in is being taken away from him, either by force or by the realization that it's not real, and the audience is left to witness this tragedy unfold before our eyes. Eventually, Randall comes to visit Arthur at his home, claiming that he feels sorry about his mother, but he really just wants to make sure that their stories are straight in regards to the gun, so that Randall himself doesn't get in any trouble with the boss. He didn't really care about Arthur. He just wanted to cover his own tracks, and Arthur knew it. Arthur then kills Randall and fortunately allows the little person to leave unharmed, saying, "You were the only one who was ever nice to me." So damn sad. Now, one of my favorite lines in the entire movie happens right before Arthur goes live on the Murray Show. He asks, "Murray, one small thing. When you bring me out, can you introduce me as Joker? Here we see Arthur accepting and embracing the cruelty of the world around him, because that's what Murray called him earlier when he was making fun of him. Joker. At the end of the movie, Arthur is on The Murray Show and he confesses to killing the 3 men on the subway. The audience gasps in horror as he does. He then reveals the hypocrisy of their sorrow, exclaiming something along the lines of, "You feel bad for those men, but if it were me who had gotten shot and killed, you wouldn't give a damn. You walk by me every single day, acting like I don't even exist." The truth in his statement is palpable. It's undeniable in the real world today, 2019. Celebrities and politicians are held up in such high regard that the news reports a story about them when they sneeze. Yet average people are forgotten, abused, killed, or disregarded every single day without a hint of sorrow or remorse from mainstream media. The hypocrisy in this world is sickening, and Arthur knows it all too well. The movie ends shortly after with Arthur being in what appears to be a mental hospital, and he seems to be genuinely laughing this time. The therapist who's sitting across the table asks him, "What's so funny?" He then smiles and responds, "You wouldn't get it." It's at this point that the lines of reality are completely blurred, as you being the audience are left wondering what was real and what was not. Was the whole movie a delusion that he had while he was in the asylum? Was all of it real? Were the fake parts actually fake? You don't know. The answers are left up to interpretation. Assuming at least some of it was real, I believe he is indeed Thomas Wayne's son. I really don't see anyone online talking about this, but near the end of the movie, Arthur is seen holding a photograph of someone who appears to be his mother. And when he turns it over, written on the back in black ink are the words, "I love your smile, TW." Now I believe the TW stands for Thomas Wayne, who was talking to his mother. And if this one fact is true, then I am sure that they had relations and Arthur is indeed his child. His mother told him during the movie that she had to sign papers long ago saying she couldn't talk about anything to do with Arthur and her relationship with Thomas Wayne due to the public backlash that would ensue with a high-level executive having sexual relations with one of his employees. And I bet you that the papers he had her blindly sign were statements of fact about her mental illness. And he had the files partly made up, and he had the records sent to Arkham Asylum. That way, if the truth ever got out about Arthur being his son, Thomas could fall back on this plan, and that Penny was insane and delusional, and he had all the medical paperwork to prove it. Now, she definitely had some type of mental problems, but nothing in the movie leads us to believe that she was abusive to Arthur as a child, based on the interactions that we see on screen. The only proof we have of abuse is an interrogation flashback scene, which is possibly fake, and we also have the possibly fake files that Arthur obtains when he visits the asylum, which once again, I believe were created by Thomas Wayne as a fallback plan, if the truth ever got out. Make no mistake, powerful people can make these types of things happen. Just look at today's world. We have high-level politicians running for president who had apparently hundreds or thousands of emails that quote-unquote disappeared and the FBI could not recover them. Do you guys remember that story? This type of behavior is relatively normal and very possible for people in high positions of power. I want to take a moment to address some of the backlash this movie is receiving in regards to it being racist or too violent. First of all, the main character, who happens to be a white man, falls in love with a black woman. And he ends up hating other white men who abuse their positions of power, like Thomas Wayne and Murray. This has absolutely nothing to do with race. It's about class and status. It's about how the rich class completely disregards and even shuns the lower class citizens in this world. And moreover, critics love watching all the Marvel movies, Deadpool, John Wick, which all, by the way, have loads of killing, murder, fighting, destruction, etc. But they never bat an eye at any of those movies. Oh no, those movies are praised and loved by the media. I believe from the bottom of my heart that there is so much dark truth in the Joker that critics themselves recognize this fact in their own hearts and they hate themselves for it. And they therefore project this hatred to the rest of the world and lash out at the movie itself, when in reality, the Joker is merely holding up a mirror to their own bigotry and misplaced sense of self-righteousness. The mainstream media hates the fact that they are exactly like the rich and powerful in this movie, and thus lash out at the film, trying to destroy it at every chance they get, while completely disregarding the blatant and obvious truth of the matter. They are part of the problem. Now, I counted about 10 deaths in this movie. How many deaths were in Deadpool? How about in John Wick? How about in the Marvel movies? Too many deaths to count. But don't worry, those movies are praised and the Joker is hated. Get out of here with your hypocrisy. Oh my God. I'd like to take a note right here to express my gratitude for the music in this movie. The music is phenomenal. The score. I forget the name of the woman who scored the movie, but her writing, her composition is beautiful, fantastic. It's haunting. It's terrifying. It's so fitting for the atmosphere and the tone. Apparently the music was written before the movie was even shot, so all she had was the script to go off of. So she was just taking in the tone from the script, and what she came out with was nothing short of spectacular. It fits so well. So, the moral of the story here is to love everyone. Be kind to all those you meet, because you never know what battles they are fighting, whether they be physical or mental. Treat people equally regardless of race, class, beliefs. All that truly matters in this world is connecting with as many living things as you can, spreading happiness and joy to the world. The Joker himself knew this, and we should all do well to remember it. Instead of belittling those beneath you, lift them up. Show them the light of life. Be kind. Be respectful. Be compassionate to all those you meet. And never forget, regardless of who you are, your background, or your social status, we are all clowns.